Buke Gase are back. They're back after 6 years. I just didn't know if this album was ever going to come. I really liked General Dome. I think that's a great release, honestly, and it's a really interesting and unique approach to indie rock music that I think a lot of people in the music world will love. So definitely check that out if you never have. It's a really great album. And Scholars is the latest album from them. It's been 6 years, like I said, a long time to wait, and it's alright. It's cool. It's alright. Not quite the triumphant return I was hoping for, but I think it's a good album nevertheless. They have a really interesting art pop sound, and on this album there are certainly more noise pop elements in the mix here, and it basically just isn't as satisfying as what they did previously, which is fine. It might satisfy some, but at times it does feel quite stiff. I do think the opening track is a bit all over the place. So when I initially heard this, I was like, oh man, what is this? But it does kind of grow on me a little bit. But yeah, it just takes quite a while to kick off, and once it kicks off, it's like, eh. But then, by the end, it's pretty cool, and it leads into the second track really quite well. Track Scholars, which also leads into the next track, Derby, and this 1-2 punch here is a great little section of the album. These are definitely the best two songs on the whole thing, I would say. Derby is just such a great track. I mean, it's got this stompy rhythm, and the melody in the lead singer's vocals is so good on this one. It is definitely the biggest highlight of the album. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. There are some other highlights too. Wrong Side is like this garagey lo-fi rock tune, which actually reminds me a little bit of like the Yeah Yeah Yeahs back in the day, like on their first album, Fever to Tell. It just reminds me a little bit of that, especially in the vocals too. Definitely getting a bit of Karen O there. Grips is another good track too, just a very creative rock track that you would expect from this band at this point. They have a nice way of, putting together tunes, and when they do it well, they hit out with great songs like this. Unfortunately though, there's just these random interludes that break up the album occasionally, like on tracks like Temporary. Not really sure what they're meant to be doing or what they're meant to be adding, but they're just kind of there. Keyball or Quiball, not sure how you would say it, again, is just there right after Grips. Doesn't really add anything at all. Doesn't, lead into the next track, Eternity, or it doesn't, it just sort of breaks up the momentum for kind of very little reason. I can't explain why they're there. I mentioned earlier as well about some tracks just being quite stiff, and No Land is a good example of that. I mean, it's certainly better than just having random 1-minute interludes that don't really tie up anything or add to the sound, but it still just doesn't really satisfy me at all. Like, it doesn't break out in any significant way. There's no sharp melody that they often are able to conjure up really well. And then back to the interlude issue I was mentioning, the album ends off on this random 1-minute cut as well. Just a bit disappointing to end that way, I think, but still, I think overall it's solid. Like, so many of these tracks are so good and so fun to listen to that I can't really deny them, but just as an overall album experience, it certainly could have been a lot better, I think, if they just developed some of the ideas on the shorter tracks, or developed some of the even longer tracks, like the first track, a little bit better, refined it in some kind of way. Solid return though, definitely not as good as their best, but I would say this is worth your time, and definitely go back and listen to their older stuff too, because that's easily much better than this. But still, 6 out of 10. I think it's decent. Let me know your thoughts if you've heard it, what I should review next. Tell me. Have a good day. Goodbye. Oh.